The kingdom of Arendor was a land of shadows and whispers, where the mountains touched clouds heavy with storm, and the rivers ran like silver veins through the forests. In the heart of this ancient kingdom stood a castle of stone and shadow, a place that seemed alive with secrets. The corridors were long, echoing with silence and the faint scent of old incense. Here lived Prince Kalen, the heir to the throne. A boy who had grown into a young man, yet carried in his eyes the weight of 1,000 sorrows. Kalen moved through the halls as if walking through a dream he did not wish to remember. The tapestries on the walls depicted scenes of triumph and grandeur, yet the prince saw only the shadows between them. Since the death of his parents, the king and queen, Kalen had worn the crown of grief even before the coronation. Whispers of betrayal and the constant expectation of perfection pressed upon him like chains. Every decision, every word, seemed heavy with consequence. And the palace that once symbolized power had become a prison of solitude. Outside the walls of the castle, beyond the forests where the birds sang and streams sparkled, lived a girl named Leora. Her life was simple and bright, the kind of life untouched by the shadows of royalty. She tended her family's small garden with gentle hands, planting seeds of hope among the rich soil. She helped neighbors with chores, listened to their troubles, and told stories to children about heroes who were brave, not because they were born to greatness, but because they chose to be. Leora's world was quiet, honest, and full of small joys, the kind that whispered of happiness without demanding grandeur. One late afternoon, Kalen slipped from the castle under the guise of a commoner. He wore a hood that hid his face, and he carried no guards, no sword, just a longing he could not name. He had grown weary of the palace, of the endless murmurs and cold eyes. In the forest, the world was different. The wind spoke softly through the leaves, and the shadows were less threatening than the ones in his mind. It was there, among the tall pines and dappled sunlight, that Kalen first saw her. Leora knelt beside a wounded creature, its fur matted with blood, and its eyes wide with fear. She spoke to it softly, her voice a melody that seemed to quiet the forest itself. Kalen watched from behind a tree, a part of him wanting to step forward, and another part afraid of what he might see, what he might feel. The creature shivered, and Leora gently wrapped it in her shawl, murmuring soothing words. She glanced up suddenly, sensing another presence. Kalen froze, caught in the raw honesty of her gaze. There was no awe, no curiosity of a prince hiding behind a mask only concern for the creature, and a spark of kindness that touched the edges of Kalen's hardened heart. "You shouldn't be here," she said gently, not accusing but observing. "The forest can be dangerous for those who do not know it." Kalen hesitated, then bowed slightly, testing the words. I meant no harm," he said, his voice careful, unfamiliar even to himself. "I was just walking." Leora smiled faintly. "Walking can be good," she said. "Sometimes it is the only way to find what you are looking for." She glanced at the creature, then back at him. "Do you know how to care for it?" I can try," Kalen said, kneeling awkwardly beside her. The creature nuzzled his hand, trusting him despite his hesitance. Leora's eyes softened, and Kalen felt something unfamiliar, a fragile warmth that seemed to flow from her gaze into his chest. They worked together until the sun sank low, painting the forest with shades of gold and crimson. Kalen found himself speaking more freely than he had in years, telling fragments of his life without revealing the truths that could betray him. Leora listened with patience, her presence gentle yet steady, a kind of light that made the darkness in his mind less suffocating. When the moment came to part, Kalen felt a weight in his chest. "I should return," he said, though he wished he could linger. "The night comes quickly here." Leora nodded, holding the creature carefully in her arms. "The forest has many paths," she said. "Perhaps our paths will cross again." Kalen lingered a moment longer, then vanished into the trees. carrying with him a flicker of something he thought he had lost forever: hope. The next days were strange and quiet. Kalen returned to the castle, where courtiers whispered and advisors demanded attention. He walked through the halls. Yet his mind was elsewhere, filled with memories of Leora's smile and the gentle touch of her hands. No banquet, no council meeting, no pageantry could stir his interest. The prince who once feared the world now feared its absence, the absence of the girl who had, unknowingly, begun to change him. Yet darkness was never far from Arendor. Rumors began to drift through the village where Leora lived. Strange omens in the forest, shadows that moved like living things, and the sudden disappearance of animals. Leora, though simple in life, was no stranger to caution. She noticed the tension in the air, the subtle shift in the wind, and the whispers that floated like mist. Something was coming, though she could not name it, and it had touched Kalen without even knowing it. One evening, Kalen returned to the forest, drawn by a force he did not understand. He found Leora near the same clearing where they had first met. She smiled, unaware of the storm gathering beyond the trees. "You came again," she said softly, her voice a gentle comfort in the growing darkness. Kalen knelt beside her, a rare vulnerability in his eyes. "I could not stay away," he admitted. "The palace, it is suffocating, and yet, I fear the world beyond it too." Leora reached out, touching his hand with quiet assurance. "You are not alone," she said. "Even shadows lose their power when faced with light." Her words, simple yet profound, struck something deep within him. Kalen felt a stirring he had not felt in years, a longing not for power, not for glory, but for something human, something real. Leora's presence was like a gentle tide washing over stones that had been cold for centuries. But peace is often fleeting in Arendor. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows through the trees, a sudden movement caught Kalen's eye. A raven, black as midnight, circled above, its eyes gleaming with an unnatural light. It let out a shrill cry, a sound that carried with it a sense of warning, of dread. Kalen's heart tightened. He had heard of such omens before, messengers of curses, of past sins clawing their way into the present. The bird descended, landing atop a gnarled tree branch near the clearing. Its gaze locked on Kalen, and he felt an icy chill run through his veins. The forest, once a sanctuary, seemed to hold its breath. Leora stepped forward, sensing the sudden change. "What is it?" she asked, fear flickering across her face. Kalen shook his head, trying to steady his voice. "I do not know, but we are not alone," he said. He rose to his feet, instincts sharpened by years of palace intrigue and survival. "You should go home," he urged. "Tonight the forest is not safe." Leora hesitated, then nodded, taking the creature with her. "Be careful," she whispered. Her eyes met his, full of trust and concern, and something in Kalen's chest ached. He wanted to tell her he would protect her, that no shadow could touch her while he breathed. But the words lodged in his throat. As she disappeared along the forest path, the raven took flight again, circling above Kalen before vanishing into the gathering darkness. He stood alone in the clearing, the weight of the omen heavy upon him. For the first time in his life, Kalen realized that the world he had tried to escape, the world of duty, power, and shadow, was not so easily left behind. And in that realization, he knew that Leora, the simple girl who had unknowingly touched the broken corners of his soul, was now part of a story far larger than either of them could yet understand. The night deepened, the wind whispering through the trees like voices from another time. Kalen's thoughts raced with fear and longing, and one truth became undeniable. The broken prince had found a light he could not ignore, and the forces that haunted Arendor were beginning to stir, threatening not only his heart but the life of the girl who had changed it. And so, under the shadowed sky, with the raven's cry still echoing in his ears, Kaelin knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The days that followed the raven's ominous flight were heavy with unease. Kaelin returned to the palace with a mind that felt more like storm clouds than clarity. Every corridor seemed darker, every whisper sharper. The castle, once merely a prison of expectation, now felt like a place where shadows were alive, watching him, waiting for a misstep. Yet amidst the weight of duty, his thoughts returned again and again to Leora, the simple girl who had brought light into the corners of his heart he thought were forever dark. Leora, meanwhile, noticed subtle changes around her village. The streams that once sparkled with clear water seemed darker, carrying a faint, restless shimmer. Animals skittishly darted through the woods, and sometimes, when the wind rustled the leaves in a certain way, it seemed almost like voices whispering secrets. She tried to ignore it, but unease gnawed at her. And she remembered the prince, the stranger who had walked into her world with pain hidden in his eyes. She felt a pull toward him, though she knew nothing of the palace, the crown, or the shadows that clung to him. One evening, Kaelin slipped once more into the forest, his hood hiding the strain in his eyes. He found Leora in the clearing, the same place where they had first met. She looked up, surprised but not afraid. "Kaelin," she said softly, "you shouldn't be here alone. The wind carries a warning tonight." Kaelin knelt beside her, a shadow of his usual composure showing. "I feel it too," he admitted. "Something stirs in Arendor. Shadows from the past that I thought were gone. They are not." Leora's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. The truth was dangerous, even to someone like her, who had never seen the world beyond the village. "There is a curse on my family," he said slowly. "It has lain dormant for generations, waiting for a chance to rise again. I thought it ended with my parents, but I fear it has only grown stronger." 8. Leora reached out, her hand brushing his arm. "Then we will face it together," she said, with a courage that surprised even Kaelin. He wanted to believe her words, but the weight of the curse pressed against his chest, making it hard to hope. Before they could speak further, the forest seemed to shift. Shadows lengthened unnaturally, and the wind carried an icy chill. A figure appeared between the trees, a spectral shape flickering like mist. Kaelin rose, instincts sharp, and Leora stepped behind him, her hands gripping his sleeve. The apparition took form, a pale, flickering image of a woman in royal attire, her eyes hollow, yet filled with accusation. Kaelin felt a stab of recognition, the ghost of his grandmother, long dead, yet bound by a curse of sorrow and anger. "Kaelin," the spirit whispered, her voice like wind through dry leaves. "You are the heir. The shadow follows you. Protect what you love, or it will be consumed." Kaelin's heart pounded. "What must I do?" he asked, though he knew the answer was beyond words. The curse had grown beyond mere warning. It was alive, reaching out through the threads of the past. The ghost vanished, leaving Kaelin and Leora in silence. The forest seemed still, but the sense of foreboding remained. Leora, though shaken, pressed closer. "We can face this," she said. "But you cannot carry it alone." Back at the palace, the shadows of intrigue were also gathering. Advisors whispered in hushed tones, plotting and scheming, eager to take advantage of Kaelin's distraction. One noble, Lord Verath, had long envied the prince, seeing weakness where Kaelin had only sorrow. Rumors of a curse reached his ears, and he plotted to use it to undermine the young heir, whispering fear into the ears of the council. Kaelin's isolation grew. He attended council meetings with the weight of knowledge pressing down, yet the eyes of the courtiers seemed sharper, measuring him, testing him. Every smile felt hollow, every word dangerous. And still, he could not stop thinking of Leora, the girl whose laughter had become the only sound that could quiet his mind. One night, unable to sleep, Kaelin returned to the forest again. Leora was there, waiting, as if she had expected him. She had prepared a small fire, its glow reflecting in her eyes. They sat together, the warmth of the flames cutting through the chill. "I feel like the world is closing in," Kaelin admitted, voice low. "There is darkness in Arendor. I cannot fight alone. And yet, I cannot stop thinking of you." Leora reached out, touching his hand. "Then we will face it together," she repeated. "Darkness is not always stronger than the heart that dares to hope." Kaelin felt the truth of her words, a fragile thread of hope weaving through the despair. For the first time in months, he allowed himself to imagine a world beyond shadow. A world where love could exist even in a kingdom steeped in sorrow. But the curse was relentless. That night, as they shared a quiet moment, a sudden wind swept through the clearing. The fire flickered and died, plunging them into darkness. The creature Leora had once cared for appeared suddenly, its eyes glowing unnaturally. Then, a low, hollow voice echoed around them, a whisper of anger and old magic. Kaelin rose protectively, placing himself between Leora and the unseen force. Shadows began to twist and writhe, forming shapes that were half man, half beast, bound in chains of mist. Leora gasped but did not flee, standing firm beside Kaelin. "You must not falter," Kaelin said, his voice stronger than he felt. "Whatever comes, we face it together." The shadows surged closer, and Kaelin felt a pain deep in his chest, a reminder that the curse was not just a story of the past, but a living force seeking to consume the bloodline. He drew upon every lesson he had learned in the castle, every ounce of courage buried beneath grief, and met the shadows with defiance. Leora, though terrified, did not turn away. She reached out her hand, placing it on his arm, and a strange warmth spread through him. The shadows recoiled, hissing like water on fire, as if her light had power the darkness could not touch. Together, they stood, two hearts against the gathering storm, and for a moment, the forest was silent. When the sun rose, the shadows had vanished. The forest seemed to breathe again, the wind gentle and forgiving. Kaelin and Leora sat in the clearing, exhausted but alive. Kaelin's chest still ached, not from the battle alone, but from the realization that the curse had marked her as well. "You are tied to this now," he said quietly, fear threading his voice. "Because of me, because of my family, the darkness may follow you." Leora shook her head. "I am not afraid," she said. "You are not alone, and I choose to face it with you." Kaelin looked at her, the weight of responsibility heavy upon him. He wanted to believe her words, to let himself feel hope. Yet the shadows of the past and the threats of the palace pressed in. Still, her courage was a light he could not ignore, a beacon guiding him through the storm. Returning to the village, Leora found that the events of the night had left a mark on her home. Strange patterns of frost traced the windows, and the animals of the village seemed restless. She realized that the magic, the curse, and Kaelin's world were no longer distant, they were entwined with her own life. And she understood, in a quiet, unwavering way, that to love Kaelin was to step into a world of shadow and danger, yet also of transformation. In the palace, Kaelin faced a council meeting that tested his resolve. Lord Varath's whispers were sharper now, insinuating doubts about Kaelin's ability to rule. "The heir seems distracted," the noble said slyly. "One wonders if the weight of Arendor is more than he can bear." Kaelin's jaw tightened. The words were meant to wound, to manipulate. But he felt a surge of something unfamiliar. Determination. He would protect Leora, confront the curse, and reclaim his strength, not as a prince haunted by shadows, but as a man who had found a reason to fight. Yet the shadows were patient. That night, as Kaelin gazed from his tower toward the village where Leora lived, the wind carried a whisper he could not understand. A chill ran down his spine, a reminder that the curse had not been defeated. It had only been delayed, And somewhere in the depths of the forest, eyes watched, waiting for the right moment to strike. Kalen closed his eyes, thinking of Leora's fearless gaze. He swore to himself that he would not falter. Whatever darkness came, he would stand against it. And in that promise, he felt a fragile hope take root. The wind carried a bitter chill across the kingdom of Arendor, rustling the trees of the forest and rattling the banners of the palace. Shadows lingered longer than they should, stretching across the land like invisible fingers. Prince Kalen stood at the edge of the castle terrace, gazing toward the distant village where Leora lived. Every instinct in his body told him that the darkness was gathering, that the curse was awakening fully at last, and he knew, with a certainty that both terrified and strengthened him, that he could not face it alone. Leora had come to the castle, despite her fears, following Kalen's insistence. She had traveled through the forest, under the cover of night, guided by the bond that had grown between them. Her eyes, wide and fearless, met Kalen's as he descended the stairs to greet her. "You should not have come," he whispered. His voice edged with worry. "The danger. It is more than either of us has faced." "I am not afraid," Leora said softly, though her hand tightened around his sleeve. "I choose to face it with you. Whatever comes, I will stand beside you." Kalen felt the weight of his responsibilities pressing against him, yet the warmth of her presence was a light against the darkness. For the first time, he realized that love did not weaken him, it gave him courage. The first sign of the curse's resurgence came swiftly. The castle trembled, as if the stones themselves remembered some long-forgotten fear. Shadows twisted unnaturally across the walls, forming shapes that were both familiar and terrible. Figures of past kings and queens, long dead, appeared and vanished, whispering accusations, regrets, and demands. Kalen's advisors fled in terror, but the prince remained, gripping Leora's hand as they moved toward the source of the disturbance, the royal crypt beneath the castle. "The curse," Kalen said, his jaw tight with determination, "has lain in the blood of my family for generations. Tonight, it seeks to claim what is mine and to destroy what I love." The crypt was dark, the air thick with ancient magic. Shadows coiled along the stone walls, writhing, as if alive. At the center, a figure materialized. A tall, spectral woman, her eyes burning with sorrow and fury. Kalen recognized her instantly, his grandmother, the source of the family curse, her spirit bound by grief and vengeance. "You have carried the weight of this family's sins," the apparition whispered, her voice echoing like the wind in a cavern. "But your heart is fractured. Only by facing your own darkness can you save those you love." Kalen's chest tightened, fear and guilt entwining within him. "I do not know if I am strong enough," he admitted. "I have failed before. I cannot fail again." Leora stepped forward, her simple presence steadying him. "You are not alone," she said firmly. "Your heart is not broken beyond repair. And together, we can face anything, even the darkness itself." For a moment, the curse hesitated, as if uncertain how to respond to such courage. Kalen felt a stirring within him, a flame of determination that Leora's words had kindled. He took a deep breath and stepped toward the apparition, lifting his hand. "I am not afraid of you," he said, his voice strong. "I am a prince, yes, but I am also a man who has chosen love, and I will not let fear rule me." The shadows shrieked, twisting violently, and the specter of his grandmother advanced. Kalen's fear threatened to overwhelm him, but Leora's hand on his arm grounded him. Together, they faced the apparition, their hearts beating in unison. "You must forgive yourself," Leora said, her voice soft yet unwavering. Kalen closed his eyes, memories flooding back. The loss of his parents, the nights of endless solitude, the fear of failure that had ruled him for years. He remembered Leora's kindness, her courage, and the simple way she had seen him not as a prince, not as a haunted heir, but as a human being deserving of love. Slowly, he whispered, I forgive myself. I will no longer be bound by the shadows of the past. A silence fell. The shadows trembled, the specter's eyes softening. The magic that had clung to the crypt for generations began to waver, like frost under sunlight. Kalen opened his eyes, and for the first time, he saw the figure smile. A smile tinged with sadness, but free of anger. With a final whisper, the apparition dissolved, leaving the crypt bathed in a gentle, golden light. Kalen sank to his knees, exhausted, yet a profound sense of peace settled over him. Leora knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. You did it, she said. We did it. But their victory was not complete. Outside the castle, Lord Verath and his allies had taken advantage of the confusion, rallying soldiers and citizens who feared the curse. They marched toward the palace, seeking to challenge the young prince while he was vulnerable. Kalen rose slowly, his resolve hardening. The kingdom will not fall to fear, he said, his voice carrying through the halls. I will protect it not just for my crown, but for the people I love, and for the life I wish to build with Leora. Leora's eyes met his, and he saw the trust and courage in her gaze. Together, they descended to the courtyard, where the tide of rebellion waited. Kalen stepped forward, not as a broken prince, but as a man transformed by love, courage, and forgiveness. He spoke to the gathered crowd, his words steady and commanding. Arendor has survived centuries of darkness, he said. We will not let fear rule our hearts. Shadows may come, but the strength of love, courage, and hope is greater than any curse or doubt. I stand here not as a prince alone, but with those who choose to see the light with me. The soldiers faltered, the citizens hesitant. Leora stepped forward beside him, her presence a living testament to the power of hope and courage. We will face this together, she said, and together, we will endure. The rebellion wavered, the power of Kalen's conviction and Leora's courage breaking the fear that had fueled it. Slowly, the crowd dispersed, leaving the prince and the girl standing together in the courtyard, the rising sun casting a warm glow over their faces. Kalen turned to Leora, feeling a sense of awe and gratitude that words could not capture. You changed everything, he said softly. Not just my heart, but my world. Leora smiled, the simplicity of her joy radiant. For the first time, Kalen allowed himself to believe that he could be happy, that he could embrace life beyond sorrow and duty. He understood that the throne, the crown, and the palace were not his prison, but his responsibility, and that love was not a weakness, but a source of strength. In the days that followed, Kalen and Leora worked together to restore peace to Arendor. The castle no longer felt oppressive. Its halls were filled with laughter, hope, and quiet moments of shared joy. Kalen's advisors, seeing the change in the prince and the courage of the girl who had touched his heart, began to support them rather than plot against them. The forest, too, seemed to breathe easier. Animals returned. Streams sparkled once more, and the shadows that had lingered in hidden corners faded. Yet the memory of the curse remained, a reminder that vigilance was necessary, but no longer a source of fear. Kalen and Leora's bond deepened, not through grand gestures alone, but through quiet moments of understanding, laughter, and shared courage. The prince learned to cherish simplicity, to see the world through Leora's eyes, and to value love as the greatest form of strength. And Leora discovered a world of wonder, courage, and resilience she had never imagined. A world she could now face with the man she loved. One evening, as they walked along the castle terrace, hand in hand, Kalen gazed at the horizon where the sun painted the sky in hues of gold and crimson. Whatever comes next, he said, we face it together. Shadows may return, but we will be ready. Leora smiled, her head resting on his shoulder. Together, she whispered, her voice carrying the promise of hope. And in that quiet, perfect moment, The kingdom of Arendor felt whole again. The broken prince had been made whole not by magic or power, but by love, courage, and the simple truth that even the deepest shadows could be banished by a heart brave enough to hope.